Hey guys, smallest country to ever qualify for a World Cup? I know you've heard that a brain-numbing amount of times by now, but how did this happen? How did this small island nation off the northern coast of South America manage to qualify? Yes, it helps when you take Mexico, the United States, and Canada out of the CONCACAF qualifying equation. But even then, I'm sure that if you ask the average person, in particular those outside of the Western Hemisphere, where on the world map they think Curaçao is, they'd be hard-pressed to find it. They may not be familiar with the country itself, an autonomous country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but you're surely familiar with the man coaching them, maybe even a few of their players. But considering they have failed to qualify for the CONCACAF Nations League finals on each of their 4 attempts and haven't made it far in a Gold Cup, how did these guys qualify? But before we get to that, what is Curaçao? So as mentioned in the intro, Curaçao, which is officially known as Country of Curaçao, is part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but before that it was a Spanish colony, and it's located 60 kilometers north of Venezuela. Now, not only is it the smallest nation to qualify for the World Cup by population, which is around 156,000, but by land mass as well, which is just 444 square kilometers. By comparison, Cape Verde, the second smallest, is 10 times bigger than Curaçao. Okay, so back in time, when the Dutch took over the island in 1634, they continued the island's focus on cattle farming. However, as most colonizers do, the Dutch West India Company later turned Curaçao into one of their headquarters, essentially, for the transatlantic slave trade. Yikes. Slavery was abolished about 200 years later, and 100 years after that, the island of Curaçao was banded together with other Dutch Caribbean islands to form the Netherlands Antilles. Now, just because you abolish slavery, we know full well that this does nothing to stop racism, prejudice, and discrimination. With a lack of jobs due to oil refinery layoffs, with racial discrimination ever present, and the people of Curaçao's general anger toward the oppression from the Netherlands, inevitably, riots broke out in 1969 that burned parts of the capital of Willemstad to the ground.
Wolken dreven boven het stadsdeel Punda nadat tal van zaken hier in brand waren gestoken.
De politie van Willemstad staat machteloos tegenover deze volksopstand.
This wasn't the first clash, it wasn't the last flashpoint, but rolling on to 2010, and you finally had a big change.
Het grootste afscheid is wat wij vanavond nemen. Het afscheid van het land, de Nederlandse Antillen. Maar het heeft natuurlijk ook een keerzijde. Want vandaag, straks, wordt geboren het land Curaçao.
The Netherlands didn't pull out completely, of course, as they continued to oversee things like defense of the nation, financial aid in the form of a debt relief program, and they even intervene in elections and politics at times as well. And Dutch is still spoken there, though the predominant language is Papiamento, which is a Portuguese Creole. Now, all of that to establish just what and how Curaçao came to be, but what about their football history? From the 1930s until the mid-50s, they entered tournaments as the territory of Curaçao and even won a gold medal at the 1950 Central American and Caribbean Games. Then, as Netherlands Antilles in the 1960s, they went on a run of finishing in the top 2 in 4 consecutive tournaments from 1959 to 1970. This was when they were at their best, as they also had 2 third-place finishes in the CONCACAF Championship / Gold Cup in 63 and 69, but things went pretty quiet from then. But since 2010, as Curaçao, rather than the Netherlands Antilles, they failed to qualify for the Gold Cup for 3 tournaments running, which, by the way, for anyone outside of the CONCACAF region, that's essentially the equivalent to Copa America or the European Championships, the Gold Cup. They've since played in it 3 times, with their best finish being the quarterfinals in 2019. Patrick Kluivert coached the team at one time, well, twice if you count his caretaker role before Guus Hiddink took over, but neither of them managed to bring much glory to the side. So, what changed recently?
Why I was so nervous?
Yes, the big man, World Cup man, Dirk Nicholas Dick Advocaat is the man at the wheel, 78 years old, set to become the oldest coach at a World Cup by a long shot after guiding Curaçao to their historic qualification. He previously coached the Netherlands at the 1994 World Cup, where they went out in the quarterfinals to eventual champions Brazil, as well as South Korea at the 2006 World Cup. Now, he wasn't in fact the first choice for Curaçao, apparently, who had their sights set on Bert van Marwijk, then Louis van Gaal, then Fred Rutten, all of which declined. President of the Curaçao Football Association, Gilbert Martina, said of Louis van Gaal, quote, "He declined because he couldn't become world champion with us." Says you, Van Gaal, just wait until Advocaat's magical run this summer. But anyway, in September of 2023, they approached Dick Advocaat, who had just concluded a season with ADO Den Haag a few months prior. He was interested in the job, but would only accept once Curaçao football had their affairs in order. Management was failing, FIFA was watching over them closely as players weren't being paid, and the program in general received minimal funding. There were times where players were flown to matches in small six-seater planes rather than commercial airlines. But with sponsors getting involved and the general organization of the association improving, Advocaat accepted the job as of January of 2024 and laid out a clear plan to improve the player base. How do you do that when the island only has 156,000 people? I mean, that's about 1/4 of the population of the city that Advocaat had just been managing in, The Hague. The city I live in, Montreal, has a population of 1.9 million people with a slightly bigger but similarly sized land area. Curaçao is 444 square kilometers, Montreal is 499. I guess quite a bit bigger, actually. Well, he did what a lot of nations do at this level, look into dual nationals, look into those who may be eligible via their parentage, and he got on the phone. He spoke to Justin Kluivert, Richedly Bazour, Armando Obispo, Joshua Brennett, Tahith Chong, Sontje Hansen, Sharandi Sambo, and Tommy St. Jago. Only Kluivert and St. Jago turned him down. The rest said yes. Now, according to an article from NOS, he apparently also spoke to Ronald Koeman and asked him about the players who may not be in the national team picture anymore that have Curaçao eligibility. So the talent pool grew with players drawn from mostly the Netherlands. In fact, the only player within the squad that was actually born in Curaçao is former Manchester United youth product Tahith Chong. He lived there until he was 8 years old before going to the Netherlands. Some of the players even represented the Netherlands at the youth levels. One of them played for the Netherlands in a qualifier in 2016, though many of them don't exactly play top flight football. There are players that play for Rotherham in League One in England, players from the Turkish second division and Saudi Arabia second division. So when you look at it that way, it's not as if they grabbed talents from the top 5 leagues and stomped CONCACAF, though there are some representatives from the Eredivisie, the Championship, and the Belgian top flight as well. All of these players have embraced their roots and the project that Dick Advocaat was able to convince them on. So when Advocaat took over, Curaçao were ranked 91 in the world, but through the professionalism that he brought to the national team, as he brought his coaching staff with him, and his vast experience, they have slowly climbed the rankings, now at 82nd, which surprisingly isn't their record high. That's 68 from 2017 when they made the Gold Cup quarterfinals. Improved players, improved tactics, and they began their qualifying campaign in the second round of CONCACAF qualifying by winning each and every match in Group C, 15 goals for, 2 against. In the third and final round of qualifying, they were in the same group as Bermuda, Trinidad and Tobago, and Jamaica. Their first match saw them tie 0-0 away to Trinidad and Tobago. Then they played at home against Bermuda with a brace from Tahith Chong helping them to a 3-2 win, a match that was closer than most would have expected. In the next month, October 2025, they hosted Jamaica, winning 2-0. Then, playing their return fixture against Trinidad and Tobago, they drew 1-1 at home. In November, however, Trinidad and Tobago did them a favor in holding Jamaica to a 1-1 draw, while Curaçao smashed Bermuda 7-0, meaning they just needed a draw away to Jamaica to clinch their place at the World Cup. It was a nervy match, but they held on for a 0-0, meaning the Blue Wave, we are going to the World Cup! Yeah! Unreal. What a dream come true for everyone involved. You have a nation of people who probably thought they would never see their country at a World Cup. You have a diaspora of players that probably had the heartbreaking realization at some point that they would never make it with the Dutch national team. Now, embracing their roots and helping their mothers or fathers or both's country make it to a historic World Cup in 2026, finding their own joy in doing so as well, who, just like the citizens of Curaçao, these players probably never thought they would ever play at a World Cup. That's why football is so fun, man. All of these stories, these narratives that build upon themselves and intertwine, thick with history, culminating in something like this end product. Man, I'm getting more and more excited for the World Cup now. Guys, thanks for watching this. I hope you learned something or found something interesting along the way. And if you did, a like really helps. If you didn't like it, dislike is there too. But thanks again, guys. See you in another video very soon.